if we can expand our ability to receive, to give and receive more love, and to recognize when we've gone off track and, recommit or open to breathing or, getting unstuck, that really all of us, the upper limit problem is the only problem.
Well, hello, both of you.
Hello, you.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Gay. What a wonderful thing to have you as our guest today. This is really a beautiful gift. Thank you.
For any of you who don't know, this is Gay Hendricks, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for now going on 45 years.
And that's right. Just last Tuesday, we celebrated our 44th anniversary of the day we met in January 9th, 1980.
Can we have a little short? Actually, I wasn't planning on doing this, but the way you met is so beautiful. Can we have?
It is. It's just it's so lovely. You want to do just a short version of that?
Okay. Well, Katie is an answer to a prayer I made in December 1979. I had a big enlightenment moment where I realized how I messed up every relationship that I'd ever been in. One was I would sometimes not tell the truth about something I did or something I was feeling. And then I figured out that always led to my beginning to project onto the other person that they were not trustworthy. And then I would continue that projection by beginning to criticize the other person. And the whole thing was a race to occupy the victim position. I would perceive myself as the victim, and then my partner
say, "Oh, no."
Yeah, it didn't matter which partner. I had a number of them, but they would never say, I am responsible for all your misery.
It's really all my fault.
Yeah, nobody ever says that. And so my partners would always respond, well, wait a minute, I'm the victim here. You're not the victim here. And then we go round and round in that. And I realized then a third thing, that every time I compromised my creativity in favor of a relationship, neither one of them ever worked out right. And I realized I only want to be in a relationship where both people are equally committed to their own creative passion. Like I'm a writer, and I go in a room for 2 or 3 hours a day by myself. And if that's not okay for the other person, there's squeakiness there. And there had been in other relationships. But I figured that could be solved if I had a partner who was so passionate about her creativity that it would never occur to her to criticize mine or how much time I spend on it. So that was number 3. So I made this vow. I said, okay, I want a relationship where both people tell the truth and listen to the truth in each other, where both people take responsibility for what's going on rather than blaming, and where both people are passionately dedicated to their creativity. And here's the clincher, though. I was sitting by myself in my little cottage when I made that vow. There was nobody else there. But I said pretty much to the universe itself, I said, and I promise you this, I'll never settle for less. I'll be alone the rest of my life if need be, but I'll never repeat that old pattern again.
Wow.
Boom. That's where I planted my...
Right, I was going to say, that's a stake in the ground.
Yes.
Stake in the ground.
Yes.
Well, the universe...
Listened.
Yeah, the universe is always saying yes. It's just that most of the time, what we're doing is something that doesn't get a yes. And the universe is sitting there waiting for the thing to say yes to if we just kind of get it out there. And so about a month later, I walked in on January 9th, 1980. I walked into a room in Menlo Park, California, and there was probably 50 or 60 people in the room, and they were all gathered around in a circle, and I was going to give them a talk. And because I was there to give a talk and do a weekend seminar in body-centered transformation. And so in that room, I was kind of scanning people's energy just to see what kind of the raw material I had to
and
work
also
with.
where the troublemakers might be.
Yes.
Where were the people that had been dragged there unwillingly, and all the kinds of dynamics that can come up. Well, as I was looking at people's energy fields around the room, I saw somebody that had the most pure, beautiful, radiant energy field. Oh. And I had to come back. I had kind of gone around the circle and I registered that. And I had to come back and take a look and see what she actually physically looked like. Because when I'm reading energy, it's more of a diffuse field, kind of like the snow on a television screen, if there's no pictures on it, patterns in that snow is how I perceive it. And but I wouldn't be able to say what the person looked like while I was reading their energy. So I adjusted my vision because I wanted to see what this person looked like. And not only that, she turned out to be the most gorgeous woman I've ever seen in my life. And so I made a little vow. I said, okay, whenever we get a break in this thing I was doing, I'm going to make arrangements to go see her and find out what her story is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to take over here for a moment, because when Gay came around and I saw that he was checking out people's energy, and I was very interested in that because I could do that, but I'd never seen anybody else doing that. And so when he came back, my experience and what I share with people is that we had an infinite moment of recognizing each other. We recognized, and then, later on, it took months to actually sort of unpack what happened in that moment. And then, he ran around the rest of the circle and started talking. So he hadn't even opened his mouth yet. So when you opened your mouth, that was it for me, because I thought, this is the smartest person I have ever heard and the funniest. And that still remains true to this day. And so at the break, I was going to go up and ask him a question. I had my question all formulated, and I went and marched up there to ask him my question. And I never got the question out of my mouth, because the first thing that Gay said was,
I'm very attracted to you.
Oh, how delicious.
And
that's making good on telling the truth.
So number one, I'm telling the truth. So number two, I said, I would love to ask you to go out for a cup of coffee with me later. But I also want to let you know that I only want to be in relationships where both people are committed to telling the truth, taking responsibility when things come up rather than blame, and are both passionately dedicated to their creativity. So on those terms, would you like to have coffee with me?
Oh my God.
I know this is all during the break. And so I got to tell you what I heard. So I heard what he said, but what I heard was, listen, I don't care what you're doing. I want you to drop everything you're doing, and I want you to move out to Colorado, and I want you to have this adventure with me. I don't know what's going to happen.
But
I don't, but I really want you to come. So it took me literally about 15 seconds.
Wow.
And I said, how about lunch?
Oh,
yes. I upped the ante.
She took it to the next level.
Which matches her too, doesn't it? Like, she very much ups the ante. That's a good moment right there. Yes.
Oh, that's one of the greatest moments of my entire life. Just that moment of Katie saying yes to all those levels of communication. And so we began this 44-year now adventure that has taken us around the world 30 some times, and to exotic locations like Oprah Winfrey Show.
That was a bit of an exotic
the faraway planet of Chicago. And so we've I think co-authored 10 or 12 books together. 12 books together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And never had a crossword during the whole thing. So it's I can tell you that all the stuff you read about in Conscious Loving, it all works if you just do it. And that was the book that we worked on for many years and came out around 1991 or so, that we were first on Oprah with.
I'm curious, because you spoke to reading energy in a way that was a little like in passing, but I would love if either one of you can deconstruct what that looks like a little. Like, how does someone learn how to do this? Like, tell us a little bit.
Well, they can always come take one of our trainings. That's a good place
That's
to start. But let me give you the 2-minute short course. First of all, I don't think it's a special skill particularly. It's just like maybe a person who's never been to a symphony orchestra listens to a symphony orchestra, but a person who's been immersed in that world can listen to a symphony orchestra and then begin to tune into what the trumpets are doing, and then tune into what the viola section is doing. And so can pay distinction to different states of things. And I think humans got here by being incredibly telepathic. You know, that in the old days, you couldn't pick up your cell phone and say, hey, where's the buffalo herd at these days, you know, or you couldn't say, oh, by the way, could you check the weather and see if that storm is coming in, because we ought to lay in some firewood. Interestingly enough, according to people that study shamanism, the original shaman were people who were really good at predicting the weather.
They were weather people.
They were weather people. And they could say, they could go, yeah, I think it's going to rain tomorrow. And, you know, can pay attention. Also, the Bushmen of South Africa, I read a piece once that was written, gosh, probably 40 or 50 years ago, that, by a person who lived among the Bushmen. And they're amazing people. They're still basically Stone Age hunter-gatherers, and they're nomads and they move around. But they can feel the movement of animals up to 9 miles away, and they say they do it by a feeling in the calves of their legs, that they listen to the ground with their feet in such a way that they can hear a buffalo herd moving 9 miles away. And that's a very useful thing for a hunter-gatherer to have, you see. But I think in human life, people have become kind of less telepathic because we can pick up a phone, or we can do what we're doing here, videotaping each other. So I think we have these incredible talents for how to see more than we currently see. And all you need to do is develop a willingness. Like, for example, how with your vision, you can look at something and then have your eyes go soft. So I think everybody can understand what I mean. So let's say you're looking at something in particular. I'm looking at the blinds across the room, and then I let my eyes go soft, where I'm not focusing intently. I'm letting them kind of go this way rather than this way. Well, what I'm talking about is a further elaboration of that skill, where you let go enough of your seeing of this stuff here, the
specific
mass, that you can then see energy moving. There are only three, you know, physicists say there's mass, there's energy, and space. That's what everything is made of. And if you think about it, we wouldn't have got here without the space and energy. You know, that we emerge out of space, and the way we merge in the human drama is by an egg and a sperm mating. But if you think of that metaphorically, the universe is always kind of giving birth to itself, to the point where astronomers tell us there's a place out in the universe that's giving birth to 32 new suns, S-U-N-S, like our sun, 32 new suns a second. That is a universal hotspot right there. Yeah. And so the universe is in this big process of going from the absolute, the spacious, down into energy, and then creating form, and then going back into space again. And it does that over and over again in all sorts of ways. And in the human version of things, that spark comes to us and it stays with us for 70, 80, maybe 90, 100 years, and then we disappear into space again. And that's the way the whole universe is set up from bottom to top. And it has a lot of practical value too. Such as, well, if I look at a person and I just look at them as a pile of meat, that's not a very useful perception. So if I'm just looking at the mass level,
you mean calling me a meathead?
I was going to say, what are you saying? She's a piece of meat.
We're all meatheads.
We're all meatheads, yeah, for sure.
I had this head stuck up on top of this 180 pounds of meat. But if we're just perceiving the mass level, if we're looking only at the superficial, what the physical is, we're missing out on a lot of things. Because if you come to a different level in the person and you say, oh, Katie, I noticed that your breathing today is kind of up in your chest and your belly seems kind of tight. What's going on with you? You know, I've given you real-time data, and that to me is the way that human beings can connect with each other, by acknowledging reality as we go deeper into ourselves, rather than the kind of superficial element of things that people are always trying to fix with the new brand of lipstick or blusher or whatever it is.
Covering things up,
Not that I'm opposed to any of those things.
Right. No position at all.
Your shade is the perfect shade, Sophie.
Matches my glasses and all.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious to this beautiful poetry that you shared. I was sensing what you were saying. I'm curious to, how do you bridge? Do you walk in the room, you have this intention that you formulated, and then you see this, not even a person from what you described, you see this energy and like, how does one, because I think yes, go.
Okay, that's a very good question. Well, what made her energy field look so different from everybody else's is your energy field is created by how much space you're open to and how you're dealing with the stuff in your life, the entanglements, the not getting along with somebody, or the 118th argument with your partner, or whatever it is, the stuff you're dealing with is all based on ways you haven't been able to disentangle that so that you can spacify that area and release the energy that's underneath it. And so when I look at a person, I can see the extent to which they've withdrawn their energy from certain things, because those show up as darker spots in their shimmering. In their shimmering, if the shimmering is fully open, if they're fully open, the shimmering doesn't have a pulsation to it so much. It has more of a steady state. That means the person in this case is dealing with the stuff in the outer part of her world as best she can without closing down and knotting up, and that she has freedom still in those areas that I could still see were a little bit bound up in her. And, when you look at a person, you have to look at a couple of big factors. Where are they with the issue of control? Because if they're controlling their energy, they're controlling their feelings, they're controlling their sexuality.
In their communication.
Then there's a lot of shadowy stuff in their shimmer. And because that comes from resistance, holding it in. But if a person is open to the pulsation of their energy, the pulsation of their feelings, they have more of a steady state background sort of shimmer going that isn't compromised by things they're entangled with. And so what I saw in Katie was the purity of her energy field was that, and she was in her 30s, you were what?
Early
31 maybe, okay. And I was 34, I think. Yeah, that's right. January, I was about to turn 35.
Right.
So we're both grown-ups and we'd had other relationships and things like that. And, beat up by relationship betrayals and things like that, which I could see in there, but she wasn't attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the great thing. I could see that she held it in such a way that it didn't compromise her movement. And I later found out that she was one of the world's great dance movement therapists. And so she was in the business of keeping her energy field juicy, but still basic decisions that she had made in her life that enabled her to stay disentangled from a lot of the things that people need to be right about or need to grind an axe about. She just didn't have that stuff. And so that was a great gift, was the seeing of her in that regard.
And I was just thinking, Soph, about how to make that bridge for people who don't know the wonderful treasure that's available by turning your consciousness to what's going on in your inner landscape. And I think one thing is to be willing to reveal your essence. So to be willing to continuously reveal who you really are, both to yourself and to others. And, getting a basic willingness statement, and then for me, it's always been bringing my awareness, my consciousness to what is happening. And letting my consciousness, so if I feel a tightness in my chest, bringing my awareness to that with curiosity, then begins to open up any untangling or a feeling that was there or a memory. And in that, I'm kind of knitting up my wholeness. That, little breaks, if you think of knitting and you drop a stitch, and, most people have dropped lots of stitches there, but your consciousness reweaves your experience of lovability, wholeness, and the ability to play with what's going on rather than controlling in fear.
It's funny because some of the words, maybe because I'm French, some of the words I'm not exactly understanding, but my body is completely understanding what you're saying. It's like it's having an experience of what you're saying, even if it's almost bypassing my ability to actually understand.
I think that's a really great thing, is to be able to bypass that and get a direct experience that you can enjoy, because I think that's at the heart of what people really want, is the experience of being alive. And that's what I saw in you, and just like, this person is fully alive and engaged, and that's always been thrilling to me. I get goosebumps when I think about it. And also I wanted to, I love what you're saying, and what it draws me to is, in your work, you've talked a lot about the upper limit problem. And I know that almost everybody in the world must know what that is, but I see from some of our posts that people don't. And I wonder if you could just give an explanation, because I think that's really at the heart of a lot of your work, and especially your new book.
Yes. Yes, I do have a new book coming out next month, February 15th. Your Big Leap Year. It's a day at a time book where we've broken the big leap down into something you can do every day.
Yeah, which I love. I think that's such a great idea. A little bite size. I can do this, and then implement.
And it's the kind of book you don't have to start it on January 1st. You can start it on day one, whenever you get the book. So you don't have to wait for the next year to roll around. Thank goodness. Because we need a lot of change in this world, the way things are.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the upper limit problem is one of the big discoveries I made first in my own life. I had my first big upper limit problem in 1969, but I didn't call it that. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but later looking back on it, it was a gigantic one. The listeners and viewers may not know, but I was a real medical problem as a kid, as a baby even. I was very obese. And then I became a very obese toddler, and I was an obese kindergartner and then an obese high school student. So anyway, I carried around all this extra weight, and nobody could figure out why, because I was the fat person in a family where everybody else was skinny. And so how's he getting all this weight? So anyway, they later found, medical science caught up to me later on in life, but it was after I'd kind of figured it out for myself. I figured something had happened in my life that turned some of my physiology upside down. And later it was discovered that there's a certain period of time when you have to activate your thyroid and pituitary gland. And somehow that didn't work for me. And so later on in life, when I was 24, I had a moment where I realized if I'm ever going to change this, I need to take full responsibility for it. Mm. And I did. And I ate only foods for the first month that I'd never eaten before. Things like fruits and vegetables. They were not on
strange things.
Strange things. And I remember I ate a lot of blueberries that month. But anyway, the big point is I started eating things that I'd never eaten before. And within the first month, I'd lost 35 pounds. Oh, I weighed 300 pounds or so at the time. And 270 is still plenty fat, but to me, I felt like $1 million because I'd lost 10% of my body weight in 1 month, really by just doing a change in my eating habits. And I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me up until age 24, but anyway, that's the way those things work. So after 35 pounds of weight loss, I was walking down the street in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I looked to my left, and there was an ice cream store there, Brigham's Ice Cream, probably still there. And there was a family of 4 eating this big ice cream sundae with bananas and chocolate sauce and everything. And I went unconscious. I just went into a trance. After 30 days of eating purely, I just went into that store and I said, give me one of those. Oh, you know, and 4 people were eating it, but the guy says, where's the rest of your party, sir? And I said, no, I am the party. And so I sat down and I don't remember finishing it, but I ate it for and for 20 minutes, while that sugar was in my body, I felt like
a shoot of heroin.
Yeah. And however, 20 minutes later, I was walking down the street again, and I got a stomachache that felt like Muhammad Ali had punched me in the belly. I actually doubled over on the street. And people were saying, "Are you okay, sir? Everything okay?" No. So that was a big lesson. That was my first big upper limit problem. But I hadn't seen it enough. Later on, I had the great gift when I was getting my doctorate at Stanford in the early 70s, was when Silicon Valley was just getting underway. And so we had all these incredible, brilliant engineers and executives that had family therapy and marital therapy issues. And so I got to see a lot of those folks in the counseling center that I worked at there on the Stanford campus. And I started noticing what I started calling the upper limit problem, because what would happen, the first time I saw it, on Friday afternoon, this executive I was working with got called in to the boss's office and said, this project you're working on, the pre-sales are going better than we ever imagined, and you're going to get a $350,000 bonus. Wow, And
I remember this was a couple decades ago, several decades ago.
It's like $1 million today or something.
Yeah.
350,000 a day, nothing, but it was a big chunk of money. Mm-hmm. So he was so excited that what he did was go home that night and create the largest argument in the 17 years of his marriage.
Oh, wow.
And I noticed that was a dramatic example of the upper limit problem. Here he goes from $350,000 bonus. Wow, I can't wait to tell my wife to.
Yeah.
And then they had spent the whole weekend trying to put it back together again. Well, most everybody isn't that dramatic, but I bet if anybody here's my assignment to you all. Look at your own life and ask yourself, how many times have the big mess ups happened after something good happened, or after you had a few days or a few weeks of feeling great? Like so many people have told me, like a buddy of mine here in town, he was an alcoholic and he had many years of blackout drinking and that kind of thing. And then he got sober and he had many, many years of sobriety. And then there was this one other moment where he had the fateful thought, it's been a while now. I bet I can handle alcohol now. And he took one drink.
Yeah.
And he said he basically woke up 9 years later. That it took him down a path again. That's an extreme upper limit problem, going from the joys and the serenity of sobriety to going down the chute again. But, many people do that. Many people have to do that.
I was thinking that the upper limit, just to summarize the upper limit, it's our ability to handle more and more of things going well. And it's not necessarily a personal issue. It's really an evolutionary issue that if we can expand our ability to receive, to give and receive more love, and to recognize when we've gone off track and, recommit or open to breathing or, getting unstuck, that really all of us, the upper limit problem is the only problem. All of your other problems can be turned into that one.
In fact, that's what I suggested early on, is people think of this as a universal problem, that it's all about learning to feel and sustain more and more positive energy. And in ourselves, maintaining a flow of good feeling. In our relationships, a flow of consciousness and listening and love with the people we care about. And so you can kind of trade in all your other problems for that one big problem of how much love and positive energy can I allow myself to feel. And Katie and I just started asking ourselves that very seriously 40 years ago, and we kept looking at the little glitches we had along the way, and that became the techniques we taught in Conscious Loving and other of our relationship materials.
I'm curious to the onset of this, like so do we all have a certain amount of happy ability, or like what happens that somehow there is even a ceiling? Like where does the ceiling come from?
Well, I think the ceiling is often put in before we can even think for ourselves. If you grow up in a somber family where nobody cracks a smile, you may not have as much of a flow of emotional energy. It's happening, but you don't talk about it, or perceive it. And so a lot of the people we work with, when they really trace it down, it does come down to old family patterns that oftentimes were there when they walked into the first grade.
I've also seen it because I've taught so many places around the world that almost all cultures have their own version of the upper limit problem. So in Australia, it's called the tall poppy syndrome. Don't be a tall poppy because tall poppies get... And one of my favorites, just because it's just so, is in Germany, they say, the bird that sings in the morning, in the evening will be eaten by the cat.
Yes, that's part of the thin book called The Wit and Wisdom.
Nobody wants to be eaten by the cat.
So I've seen this really in every culture that I've been in. There's a particular version. It's, when I was growing up, it was like, what will the neighbors think?
Yeah.
So that was the ceiling, is that you couldn't be, too much. Just don't be too much of yourself. And, my mother telling me, boys don't like girls who are too smart. So don't be too, all of the don't be's, that something terrible is going to happen.
And if you go to Sweden, one of the first words you'll learn is lagom, which means don't be too much, don't be too little. Just stay right in the middle of the pack.
There.
Yeah.
So if one finds out, because I'm hearing what you're saying as also my weight, as you know, Guy and I share, and Katie we share this experience with our bodies. And I feel like my extra, which went to 340 pounds, so I would say a nice sized castle around me. Wasn't that a limit? Like that was an upper limit problem. Like I couldn't fully enjoy life with this weight on me.
Yeah, well, imagine if you think of your fat as stored genius waiting to be cashed in. But as you cash it in, you don't need the weight anymore. The weight is a defense. You probably at some point perceived that in the situation you were growing up in, you couldn't be your full self. You couldn't be who you really were. And so you added levels of padding around that. And especially if you grow up in a family, where everybody else is chic, and you're the fat one, like was true in my family. If you look at me and my brother when we were kids, he was this fabulous looking golden boy. I mean, he looked like Tab Hunter with a crew cut, and here he was next to this gigantic blob of a kid, with glasses and a funny hat on and everything like that. So my brother frequently question would be, what family do you come from anyway?
Ooh, lovely. So it's tied to the zone of genius. You just made a link, not heard. The fat stores my genius. Like if I don't live my genius, somehow it gets capitalized in there, like it gets built in the fat.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, you're the great proof of that. Look, you're in your genius today and you're looking fabulous. And compare yourself to when 20 years ago, how much of your genius had you expressed then, that you were still hiding behind the facades of fat. And so now you don't need that because you're fully in your genius zone. And congratulations to that, by the way.
Thank you. I did get to, it's funny because I just lost about 60 pounds, which were the last 60 pounds of the adventure. I'm now where I'd like to be. I feel wonderful. But that last 60 pounds took me 9 years when everything else took me 2.5. Like it was the last chunk somehow I was still holding on to till very recently.
What I'm also hearing is that the fat and also the other kinds of buttressing that we do against the world is, I think, to create safety.
Yeah. Because
we don't feel safe and we're not safe to express ourselves. And you've been taking responsibility for sourcing your own safety. Mm-hmm. And my sense is that we can all do that by saying what's true, by the things that Gay was just talking about, taking healthy responsibility, sharing what's true, and devoting time and energy to creativity. Those all, start infusing life into all that blobbiness, and then it can release the genius bubbles that you can then express, and because you are safe. Because you're creating that rather than waiting for something to change out there.
It's not just related to weight either. If you notice, like when you're in your late 30s, going into your 40s, you usually come across some old personality pattern that still kicks up, whether it's trying to get approval or control or whatever it is. Needing to be right. There's some little crystallized pattern that's still in the works. And a lot of our transformational work in our 30s and 40s have to do with finally learning to love that old whatever it is that's driving that pattern. And as you do that, like in developmental psychology, we say in your 30s, you find your life. In your 40s, you build your life. In your 50s, you enjoy your life from then on. And so I can't remember how old you are, frankly, but
right on schedule. I'm 55, right on schedule.
Okay,
right.
Yeah. So that's perfect, actually, because now, I mean, what a great time to be peaking with your genius. That's the prime right there, where you're old enough to be listened to. Yeah. As a wise, almost elder, but you're also youthful enough to have a tremendous amount of energy too, which I hope you don't waste completely on the pickleball court.
I was going to say, I use it a good amount for pickleball. That's perfect. I'm curious too. So for those that are listening, maybe I've read the book, but how does one transfer that? Okay, so how does my day changes from what you just said? If I wasn't as playful with it already, someone just hears this idea that there's a limit to what they give themselves happiness with. then what? Like a moment happens, I'm feeling
then
it's
what?
right. What do we do now?
Well, in the Big Leap, I suggest the sequence of once you start realizing this, then look at the fears that are underneath and driving your upper limit, because there's only, like 4 or so that are really important. A lot of people are driven by the fear that they are fundamentally flawed in some way. They're convinced that they're not smart enough, not tall enough, not thin enough, not whatever it is, not good looking enough, not the right skin color, whatever, to do whatever it is they want to do. And so that's one big issue. Another big issue is many people are afraid of the spotlight. They're afraid to really let themselves shine. They've got some old program that says it's okay to be number 2 or number 3 or something like that, but I don't have access to it. I can't enjoy my full creativity. But, I'm a cheerleader for everybody contacting their creativity, because, human beings got here. We're here because of millions of years of creative moves. Just think about all the hundreds of millions of years that some creatures, like I once saw in an aquarium in New Zealand, I saw a fish called the hagfish, or the slime eel.
It's a slime eel.
And for the last 350 million years, this fish has just swum in figure eights. That's all it does, basically. And if you try to stop it, if you touch it, that's why it's called a slime eel. It exudes a quart of slime. So it's not good with feedback. And
Clearly.
I know some people like that anytime I try to give them feedback, they exude.
They actually, the whole idea of being slimed, well, we saw the source of that, in this slime eel. I thought, that is real.
So for 350 million years, this thing hasn't gone anywhere because it's just going in circles. So human beings, we made a different path. Like if you go back even 50 million years, the whales, they tried it up on land for a while, and then they said, this is not our place. And so they went back to the water, and we continued we sort of started humping around up on land. And pretty soon we, got to where we got to with it. But there's all sorts of different evolutionary paths, but ours got here through incredible amounts of creativity. That's why I say also that no human being should ever suffer from self-esteem, because there are 9 million species on this planet, and we're one of them. And we're the only ones that can have a conversation like this. So, wow.
We're ahead of the pack already.
Yeah.
Well, and just so much more possibility. Yeah. One practical thing I was thinking of that we suggest to people is to commit to 10 minutes, scheduling 10 minutes, usually in the morning, where you're devoting yourself to your creativity. Creating. That could be doing something differently, just even as easy as brushing your teeth with your other hand, or going a different way to work. But your 10 minutes is really exploring, what is it that I want, and how can I express that, and what's a new way I might express that. So it could be, doodling, or making a new soup, or it doesn't have to be any like the book. I'm going to create my book in 10 minutes. But we found that just 10 minutes a day begins to awaken the expression of your genius more and more. And then that gets integrated. And it's a small enough time that it's less likely to trip the upper limit. You can kind of sneak in, 10 minutes of expansion, and then let that integrate to the rest of your day. And I've experienced people having great success with just starting with 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was curious, the way you spoke to it, which I'd never thought of before. It sounds like if I raise my own creativity, my commitment to creativity, there is less room for the upper limit to take over. It's like one takes over the other.
Exactly. That's once you get a few of those upper limit glitches out of the way, the things that are holding you back, then you're free to just expand in your genius zone as much as you want. I haven't really had an upper limit in a long, long time. And it's creative stuff just keeps on going and going and going and going and going. And I think the reason for that is that I'm just open to it.
Yeah.
It comes and it goes.
You're way open. You got an open faucet.
Yeah, I got an open faucet. My mentor, Jack Downing, used to say that it's a mistake for human beings to think there's a faucet called pleasure and a faucet called pain. He said there's one faucet. It says awareness on it. And you either open it up and get more aware of what's going on, or you close it down and decide to walk off.
Well, you in closing, your creativity is a perfect segue, because this new book that's coming out, and I've read, of course, the one before. This one is a page per day that we can practice.
Per year, yes.
Yes, in fact, it's 366 days because it's a leap year.
It's leap year this year.
Oh, this year.
Yes, that's the point.
And then next year, when it's not a leap year, I can leave one out. I can choose which one I don't want to focus on as much. 365. So this is beautiful. We'll have everything about the book, everything about this show in the notes. Is there anything you want to say in closing? Yes,
I want to suggest that you get willing to have all of your upper limits be friendly.
Oh.
So, we're going to be encountering, sort of bumping up against. And so one of the intentions that I've been creating recently is, okay, I'm willing to have all of my upper limits be friendly. So be friendly to me and others. And so I might notice just before, I notice that I'm just about to bump into something. I go, oh, thank you. Yeah.
And use the power of commitment. Just use a simple sentence like, I commit to bringing forth more and more of my creativity every day of my life. Just a simple idea, and using that as a background driving force for every day.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you both for being here and sharing your thoughts with us. And talk to you soon, I hope. Have you again.
Oh, I hope so too. Thank you so much. That was great fun.
I hope to see you again soon.
I hope to see you
for lunch or something. I love you. I love you both.